Welcome to the Surviving to Thriving podcast with Jim Squire. I'm a licensed psychotherapist here in Toronto, Canada. And the title of this episode is The Courage to Be Authentic. And so today we're talking about authenticity. Authenticity is one of those words we hear everywhere. Be yourself, live your truth, show up authentically. But the reality is, for many of us, being authentic is one of the most courageous and challenging things we will ever do. And so in this episode, I want to help explore what authenticity really means, why it can feel so risky, and how you can begin reclaiming the parts of you that have been hidden, silenced, or softened just to get through life. When we talk about authenticity, a lot of people think it means being transparent, saying everything you think, expressing yourself without a filter. But authenticity isn't about oversharing, it's about alignment. It's about feeling that your inner world and your outer world match. In psychotherapy, we call that, or in psychology, we call that congruence. You're not pretending, you're not performing, you're not shrinking or inflating yourself to survive the moment. You're simply allowing who you really are to be present. In psychotherapy, we often talk about the adapted self versus the authentic self. The adapted self is who you became to stay safe. The pleaser, the overachiever, the problem solver, the caretaker, the avoider, or the one that keeps the peace. These roles aren't bad, they served a purpose, they protected you. But they also become masks we forget we're wearing, and over time we lose the ability to hear our own voice beneath the one we're rehearsing for years. Gabor Mate, the author, speaks about the tension between authenticity and attachment. How as children, if we feel we cannot have both, we will always choose attachment. We will learn to silence our authentic impulses to maintain connection and ensure survival. When we grow up in families or cultures where our true feelings aren't welcomed or supported, we often learn to trade authenticity for attachment. To stay connected and safe, we disconnect from our true self. In childhood, this inauthenticity becomes a survival strategy. But as adults, it becomes a barrier. We often fear being who we really are because we learned long ago that honesty could lead to rejection. And we all know that nobody likes rejection. The result, we enter relationships when we're terrified to speak our truth, share our needs, or show our inner world. We end up partnering, but still feel profoundly alone because if you can't be known, you can't feel connected. The cost of this pattern is not just emotional, it's physical. One long-term study of 2,000 women found that those that were unhappily married and suppressed their feelings were 4 times more likely to die over a 10-year period than those who were equally unhappy but expressed themselves. In other words, inauthenticity takes a measurable toll on us. None of this is a moral failure. It's simply the way many of us had to survive as children. But the very patterns that once protected us become the source of anxiety, disconnection, and loneliness later in life. The truth is simple. When you can't be yourself, you can't feel truly connected, no matter how many people are around you. And that's why the journey back to authenticity is so essential. In internal family systems, which I use a lot in my practice, we see authenticity as the natural state of the self. Trauma, fear, conditioning cause protective parts through our life to step forward to ensure we're safe. They are helpful, but they also pull us away from and cloud and block our true center. Brene Brown often says that authenticity is a daily practice, not a one-time revelation. It's built moment by moment through courage and compassion, and I would agree. We have to choose it intentionally, especially in the beginning, if even for a few moments here and there. And we'll get to some exercises later in the podcast where I'll make some suggestions around how to start moving towards being more authentic. Why is authenticity so hard? It's hard because it's scary, because it brings risk. As I mentioned, rejection. The human nervous system is wired to detect risk before it detects truth. So we fear rejection, we fear conflict, we fear disappointing people, we fear being too much or not enough. For many people, authenticity was punished early in life. Maybe you spoke up and were shut down. Maybe you had needs that weren't met. Maybe you were shamed for crying or expressing joy or having your own preferences. So you learned to adapt. You learned to mask, to overfunction, to numb emotions, to be agreeable, to be quiet, or to become the one who holds it all together. These are survival strategies, and they worked. They kept you connected, and they kept you safe as a child. But now as an adult, you find that these strategies that protected you are the same ones preventing you from experiencing the authenticity and connection you crave. When trauma and emotional wounds are part of your history, and for most people they are, your nervous system becomes trained to prioritize safety over authenticity. It's not that you're weak, it's that your brain believes authenticity is dangerous. And as hardwired social creatures, rejection impacts our survival. So in a sense, if authenticity brings rejection, it is dangerous. So here are some signs you may be not living authentically. And perhaps some of this resonates with you. Here's a few signs that you're out of alignment with your authentic self. You say yes when every part of you wants to say no. You feel exhausted after social interactions, like you've been performing. You notice you become a different version of yourself depending on who you're with. I sometimes refer to this as being a chameleon. You adapt to different environments to fit in. You struggle to set boundaries or express your preferences. You go along to get along. You feel resentment building up under the surface. You can't quite answer the question, what do I want? Maybe you feel a quiet ache inside, a sense that your life doesn't quite fit. If you felt anything there, you're not alone. In fact, almost every client I've worked with has felt some version of this. A lot of the clients I deal with in midlife come to me, in a sense, confused. They have objectively everything they want. They have a good career, they have a family, they have lots of friends, but they feel disconnected, they feel lonely, they feel unfulfilled. A lot of the interactions seem empty. And that's because when you aren't authentic, you often experience more of a surface level connection with someone. And a lot of people are quite happy just staying in a sort of preconditioned, safe way of engaging, talking about sports, talking about work, talking about general things, not talking about what's really going on. Because it's too risky. What if someone rejects you? What if someone laughs at you? These are the things that happen when we try to be authentic. The little voice inside of us typically is saying, don't do that. Don't share that. Don't express that. It won't be accepted. It won't be welcomed. You'll be rejected, whatever it is. It's typically the little voice inside your protective parts that are telling us, don't do this. Maybe this is the first time you thought about this. Some people don't reflect that deeply on these things. But now I'll talk a bit about how to reclaim your authentic self. And this, for many, is where healing begins. It's not a dramatic transformation necessarily, but it's small, intentional steps. So you start each day with the intention of being a little more authentic than the day before. You try to slow down the internal noise. Authenticity requires access to self, the calm, centered, grounded state in IFS. I love meditation in the sense of helping us get out of our thoughts and out of our emotions and connect with the deeper self. Some people need to be able to focus on their breathing for quite a while to just get themselves out of their thoughts and out of their emotions. And then you can start to get a sense of what is really going on inside. As we go deeper and we sit with ourselves, we can notice different parts of us showing up. We can notice the people pleaser, the protector, some fear showing up. Just naming these parts creates a bit of space and helps with self-awareness. It takes a bit of practice. And on my YouTube channel, I have quite a few videos that will help you connect with parts of yourself. As I said earlier, there's parts of you that, voices in your head that are telling you to not expose yourself, to not be honest, to not share those deeper emotions, thoughts, experiences, because it may not be accepted. And we've all had experiences where we've shared something deeper and we've been rejected, or we've been criticized, or something negative happens. But I think for most people, it's about a choice. It's about, do you want to change and move to something different? And if so, that takes risk and that takes courage. And if you're tired of living on the surface and living through an inauthentic self, then this is the path forward. Listen to your body. Your body knows the truth before your mind does. Tension, tightness, fatigue, these are signals that you're overriding yourself. If you can start to look inward and ask questions, what's going on here? Notice the way these feelings, heaviness, tension, tightness shows up in your body. Try to connect with those parts and start asking your internal self, what is going on with me? Most people know exactly what they want, but they don't want to feel the consequences of admitting it. We need to start viewing boundaries as self-honoring. I know for a lot of people who've had, especially have had trauma, their self-worth has been impacted. So they don't feel they deserve to have things. That's why they go along with what others want. They don't speak up. But a boundary isn't a wall, it's a way of staying in a relationship without abandoning yourself. And it takes practice. It takes baby steps moving towards that slowly. We don't want anyone to go and move too quickly, become overwhelmed, and then retreat back thinking that I'm not going to do that again, which is quite common. So we begin with something we call micro-authenticity. One honest sentence a day, a small preference voiced, one moment of courage. I usually suggest that people think of people that are closer to them, that are safer, and trying it with them first. So when a friend says, what movie would you like to go see? Instead of saying, I don't know, what do you want to see? Say, hey, there's this new whatever movie. I'd love to see it. Now, in that moment, you'll probably feel some discomfort because what if they don't want to see it? What if they get mad at me? What if they're frustrated with me? What if they think something negative about me? Those are the reasons why we aren't authentic typically. But if you start with people that are safe, that care for you, you can start choosing this. And what you'll notice typically is that it goes over well. It's well received, it's positive, and over time, it gets easier to do it again and again. And so authenticity goes through repetition. Small truths spoken consistently eventually become habits. And the body starts to realize, hey, I can be authentic. I can speak my truth. And something negative doesn't happen. And so as long as we start with people that care for us, that are, I would sometimes call safe people, we can build this momentum. Have some compassion for yourself. Of the parts that learned to adapt and the parts that had to help you survive. We don't push those parts away. We don't ignore those parts. We're not trying to kill the adapted self. You're thanking it for protecting you. You're trying to have a more loving, accepting way of relating to all of yourself, understanding why parts of you did what they had to do, why you showed up in a certain way. We don't want to be resenting our adapted self. We want to be embracing all of ourself and with understanding and compassion. And I know that's not easy for some people, but we start one day at a time. Authenticity is not a new identity you claim. It's a direction you walk toward every day. As I often say, baby steps. So relational authenticity can be really challenging. A lot of us have not been authentic in our relationships, and we fear if we start being authentic, what will happen? Maybe we'll be abandoned. Maybe we'll trigger some conflict. If you start slowly and you're honest about it, what you're doing, people that are healthy, that care for you, will welcome it. So when we show up with honesty, clarity, and groundedness, we allow intimacy to deepen. We give others permission also to be real too. And in some cases, it can transform relationships in a very positive direction. You may find, though, that some people don't want to go there with you. They are confused by this new version of you. They're not sure why you're changing. And it's okay if you notice those people, if you're aware that they're not accepting of this, then spend either less time with them or try to be more authentic with other people. Now, I typically find that there's a process to go through, and some people can get kind of confused. If I had a friend who's very controlling, who always dictated what we did, what activities we do, where we went, and what we did, and all of a sudden I start speaking up and saying, hey, these are some things I'd like to do, they might have an issue with that because they like being in control. So be aware of that. Some friends and some relationships can't evolve in that direction, and it's up to you how you navigate that. But there will be people that will appreciate and love your authenticity, and you will become very close and connected with those people. Especially with children and parenting, authenticity helps children with emotional intelligence. It mirrors healthy behaviors, healthy ways of being to young people. If we also honor and praise and accept, as I sometimes refer to these authentic, organic behaviors of children, that goes a long way as well. A lot of times when we're quite harsh with children, it's because we're in a public setting or we're in a family setting, and we're worried that somebody might view what's happening negatively. They may think that we're not a good parent, we don't have control of our children, and so we curtail the children's behavior and their impulses and their organic self, in a sense, coming through to comply, to look well behaved, etc. And it's up to you how you approach this, but just become more aware of what's driving the need to control behavior. One of the things I noticed when I was young was that a lot of us were in fear. It was typically spanking was common when I was young, and parents were quite quick to discipline. So we weren't comfortable being our authentic selves, generally. We were kind of a bit scared at times, especially if dad was around. Dads can be kind of scary. We were quite focused on being well-behaved and compliant. And so nowadays, when I see children running and playing and running in a restaurant, I know a lot of people don't agree with this, I feel happy for them because they're free and they're being themselves. And I understand that we live in society, there's rules, and we have to control certain behaviors, etc., especially for safety. But there's still, for me, a lot of joy in seeing a child laugh, jump up and down, in public. Typically, when I was young, that would be frowned upon. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that the parents would think that other people would think they're not parenting well. Children don't listen to them. And that was a big concern. I don't know if it's not as big of a concern these days. I think a lot of the behavior that people see that they struggle with, and they think, oh, kids are not well behaved. I feel that they're allowed to be more authentic, and they're allowed to be themselves, and they're less likely to be in therapy perhaps when they're older because they didn't have to stuff their authentic self to adapt. I know a lot of what I just said may be controversial, and some people don't agree. That's fine. These are just some of my thoughts related to authenticity, especially when it comes to parenting. So here's a guided reflection or an exercise that you can do to begin developing more self-awareness, noticing parts of yourselves, getting a sense of what's authentically going on with you. If you're interested, find a comfortable position, let your shoulders drop, let your breathing slow down, take a few deep breaths. Maybe hold one for a bit and release it. Now ask yourself quietly, and listen after you ask this, what part of you is asking to be heard today? And just notice perhaps a voice rising in you, part of you that speaks up and says it wants to be heard. Maybe it's a part of you that's been exhausted. Maybe it's a part of you that's been pretending to be okay. Maybe it's a part of you that's longing to be more fully expressed. Maybe a part of you that's scared, that's overwhelmed. Whatever shows up, acknowledge it, thank it. It's been working hard for you, and it's been trying to keep you safe. Authenticity begins with a gentle curiosity and compassion towards your inner world. In closing, I'd like to thank you for joining me for this episode. And I encourage you, if any of this resonated with you, to try one small act of authenticity this week. Consider a boundary with someone, express a truth, maybe listen to a part of you that's been quiet for too long, even if you don't share it. And if you need help reaching that authentic self, then by all means, reach out to me at www.jimsquire.org.